In the far outer spiral of the Orion Arm, way beyond the bustling trade routes and those star maps simply marked unnecessary for humans, floated a small, serene, blue-green planet. Its inhabitants knew it as CoconutA. Now CoconutA was famous across the nearby systems for two very specific things: its vast, seemingly endless oceans, and its adorable small alien cubs. These cubs were called the Kiri. Picture this: tiny, perfectly round little creatures with enormous, expressive eyes, covered in the softest fur you can imagine. Their defining trait, however, was a curiosity so powerful, so all-consuming, that it had, on occasion, led to what could be politely described as minor planetary disasters. But today's story isn't about disasters. No, this story is about coconuts. It all started with a Kiri cub named Tomo. He was the first one to spot it. Sky falling. Tomo chirped, his voice a high-pitched squeak as he pointed a stubby little paw toward the heavens. The other cubs playing nearby Lumi, Pax, and Neriol tilted their heads and looked up. Just in time, they saw a fiery object streaking across the midday sky. It trailed a long tail of fire and thick black smoke before it crashed with a tremendous splash into the shallow sea, right near their favorite coconut groves. The cubs let out a collective gasp. "A meteor?" Pax asked, his voice trembling slightly. "No," Lumi said, squinting her large eyes. "It's too round." Without a second thought, and certainly without waiting for permission from any responsible adult alien, the four cubs waddled as fast as their little legs could carry them toward the splash site. What they discovered was definitely not a meteor. It was a human emergency supply pot, scorched black from its fiery descent, cracked open and half buried in the wet, warm sand. And scattered all around the broken pod were many strange and fascinating objects. There were shiny metal boxes, brightly colored plastic tools, and one particularly large crate with bold letters printed on its side. The letters read, "Coconuts, Emergency Nutrition." Neri, ever the bravest, cautiously poked the crate with his nose. "It smells happy," he declared. Working together, their little paws and claws scrabbling at the lid, they managed to pry it open. They all tumbled backward in a heap as dozens of brown, hairy spheres rolled out onto the sand. Tomo picked one up, turning it over and over. "It bites?" he asked nervously, eyeing the hairy surface. Lumi shook her head with an air of authority she didn't quite feel. She picked up a nearby rock and tapped the sphere. Crack! The coconut split open, spilling clear liquid and revealing bright white flesh inside. For a moment, the cubs just froze, staring at the unexpected bounty. Then, Pox leaned forward and tentatively licked some of the coconut water that had pooled in the sand. His eyes, already huge, widened even more. "Stars above," he whispered in awe. This is joy." That was all the encouragement they needed. The cubs crowded around, eagerly tasting, chewing, and chirping louder and more excitedly with every single bite. It was sweet. It was cool. It was crunchy. It was completely unlike anything that grew on CoconutA. Within minutes, the little group had devoured 3 whole coconuts and were now rolling around on the sand, utterly content and filled with a pure, unadulterated happiness. From that moment forward, the coconut was no longer just a fruit. It was sacred. It was sacred. 2 days later, a sleek human rescue ship gracefully entered the planet's orbit. On Tebridge, Captain Elena Morales stared at her scanner console in utter disbelief. "Can someone explain why this planet is showing a sudden, massive spike in coconut-based agricultural activity?" she asked the bridge. Her science officer, leaning over his own console, frowned. "And, Captain," he added, "I'm also picking up coconut worship chants." They landed their shuttle near the groves, and what they saw left the entire crew speechless. Hundreds upon hundreds of small Kiri cubs had gathered in a large clearing. They were wearing coconut shells as hats, as necklaces, and somehow, inexplicably, as little shoes. In the very center of the clearing stood a massive statue, painstakingly built. It was shaped like a coconut, with tiny, glittering stars carved all around it. The cubs were chanting in unison, a happy, rhythmic sound. "Co note. Co." Captain Morales stepped forward slowly, holding her hands up in a peaceful gesture. "AU." "Hello," she said, her voice sounding loud in the sudden silence. The chanting stopped. All eyes turned to her. Tomo, the cub who started it all, waddled forward, holding a half-eaten coconut in both paws, like a precious offering. He looked up at the tall human and asked a simple, hopeful question. "You bring more." The humans learned the full story very quickly. The emergency pod had accidentally introduced coconuts to a species whose biology, by a 1 in a billion chance, was perfectly adapted to process coconut nutrients. For the Kiri cubs, eating coconuts dramatically increased their growth rate, boosted their immune systems, and most strangely of all deepened their emotional bonds with each other. The entire cub population had become calmer, smarter, and demonstrably happier. Captain Morales knelt down to be at eye level with the small creatures. "That pod, it wasn't meant for you," she explained gently. "It was an accident." The cubs let out a collective, worried gasp. "You won't take them back?" Lumi asked, her voice small. "No," Morales said, a warm smile spreading across her face. "We won't take them back. In fact, we can bring more." A wave of jubilant cheers erupted from the crowd of cubs. In return for this incredible gift, the Kiri elders offered the humans something they desperately needed: access to Kuruka's deep ocean energy crystals, a rare and powerful resource humanity had been searching for 4 decades. A trade agreement was formed. But more importantly, a friendship was born. Months later, the very first interstellar coconut festival was held on Korukai. Human ships arrived, not with weapons or soldiers, but with holds full of coconut saplings, farming tools, and even chefs specialized in coconut cuisine. The Kiri cubs greeted them with joyful songs. Human children disembarked and joined the cubs, laughing as they learned how to crack open coconuts using rocks, their happy echoes filling the groves. One human child, sitting beside Tomo, asked him, "Why do you like coconuts so much?" Tomo thought for a long moment, looking from the coconut in his paws to his new human friend. "Because they came from the sky," he said finally, "and they brought friends." Later that night, Captain Morales recorded her official log entry. Her voice was filled with a sense of wonder. "Humans didn't conquer this world. We didn't impress them with our advanced technology or our military strength. We accidentally dropped some food, and somehow that changed everything." It seems that sometimes being human isn't about being the strongest. It's about sharing what you have, even if you do it by accident. And down on the surface of under the light of its twin moons, hundreds of small alien cubs slept peacefully, their bellies full of coconut, their dreams filled with distant stars, and the kind-faced humans. Across the galaxy, a new saying began to spread among diplomats and traders. Never underestimate humanity. They can win over an entire planet with nothing but kindness and a crate of coconuts. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tailies from across the galaxy. See you next time.